for some of us secretly, we crave that consumption. We crave being angry. We crave the toxicity. We crave feeling sorry for ourselves or feeling sorry for somebody else. We crave looking down at others. There's something about it that gives us this false sense of feeling good. And for a lot of us, so much of what we do is comparing. So today I'll start with a quote. Something that I've been thinking about for a while. So communication is not only about what you say, but it's also about what the other person hears. And why this is really important, we can take this concept for like an external meaning of what somebody else actually hears, as in another person in our life. But on a personal level, we can always reflect that back to the mind and the body. Sometimes your mind will say one thing and your body will understand something else, and it can get confusing. So when we take some time to really rest and digest, just like we just did, sometimes it will help reconnect and realign. The other thing is, sometimes when we communicate to other people in our life and we feel like they don't understand us, a lot of times we are either speaking our mind, where again our body is not aligned, or vice versa. We're speaking from a very emotional space where it can be very overwhelming for the other person. And as women, we have cycles. But sometimes if we take a few minutes to slow down and really create some clarity around what is actually going on in reality, it can really help us simplify the communication. Because simple things are easier to do than hard things. Simple ideas are easier to implement. When we think of love, even love for ourselves or love for somebody else, we think of a very complex situation. But in truth, there can be little things that we can implement rather than them be these big, ambitious gestures. So it's also knowing when we're able to simplify our life, right? When we're able to take away some of the distraction. In last week's, it's the last newsletter that I just posted, I talk about like financial and your time, right? Like budgeting your finances and your time. And it kind of works in that space where if we notice what we're committing ourselves to, what are we dedicating ourselves to, what ideas, and then asking ourselves if those things are really a reality, right? So for example, for myself, certain elements of social media, if I see that it's not a two-way street in the sense that it's not giving me enough for what I'm putting in, then it might not be something I should be engaging with, even though there is quote unquote promise. And yes, there can be the excuse of I'm not using it right, or it's an algorithm thing, or all of that. But when we boil down things in our life and we simplify and we're able to connect the mind and the body, we can ask ourselves, where am I? Does this make me feel loved or anxious, right? And is this easy to implement? So just taking that into consideration. Love is not only about feeling the love for someone, but the connection in itself, where the other person is able to feel the love you have for them. Now, the way I explain this is, in simple terms, it would be the difference between a religious Jew that practices and somebody that says they believe in God in their heart. There's a difference between loving somebody in your heart and it being a little bit more self-centered, and where true love comes in is in the genuine practice, right? In the concept of actual connection, when you feel connected to somebody else. But it's not only that you feel it, it's not an illusion. When you know that you are really connected is when that other person can feel it. So based off the beginning of, it's not only what you are saying, but what the other person is hearing, right? Because how it's received is such a big part of how of the experience in itself. And for a lot of people, they really struggle with that. So a really great tip for this would be to focus on similarities rather than differences. When we find our commonalities, simplicity is common, right? Complication is unique. And when people are feeling insecure or overwhelmed, or they want to feel special, I always say to them, the challenge with feeling special is also that you're going to feel isolated. And then when there's this building of something unique, it's very complex. And it's harder to implement in general. Simple things are easier to implement. So think about in your life in general, when we talk about self-care, or even a gesture that somebody that you're trying to communicate love to, think about a gesture that they would appreciate, right? Instead of, let's say a grand vacation, asking that person, how can I make you feel loved? Or how can I communicate love to you? And for that person, it could be, for a child, it could be, I need a hug at night, or tell me that you love me, right? Or if everybody has their little thing of their small gestures that make them feel special. So it's just taking a moment to also ask the other person what that is. And when we do that, it opens up the portal of the other person also being receptive to hear what you have to share. And what's really, really important, why these kinds of conversations are important, and why love and compassion is such an important or vital part of our life, is because love is consumption, right? There's a consumption part of love, and whatever you consume consumes you. So if we have healthy habits, it will create a support system, a healthy support system. And if not, then it will really consume us. I gave a lecture the other day, and I brought in a slightly hostile scenario, and I watched the anger consume her. And we were doing this exercise where that was kind of part of the exercise of exploring how things consume us. And I said to her, for some of us secretly, we crave that consumption. We crave being angry. We crave the toxicity. We crave feeling sorry for ourselves or feeling sorry for somebody else. We crave looking down at others. There's something about it that gives us this false sense of feeling good. And for a lot of us, so much of what we do is comparing, right? So when we're comparing, that will give us, I want to look better than somebody else. I want to have more money than somebody else. I want to be one of the better ones. And I want to have the best family. And again, I'm not talking on a conscious level. This is not a conscious level. This is a very subconscious level of asking yourself, what are the things that subconsciously consume you and then you constantly begin to feed into, right? What are you always looking for, right? So for some people, that's the thing that gives them life, right? They only are able to go and do something in their day after they've consumed something triggering. For example, I gave this example a little while ago, but like I was listening while I like pour product and just manufacture, I was listening to a couple debates, and I started to observe that the debates in themselves started consuming me. There was a certain satisfaction that I started to enjoy listening to people argue. And I was like, I don't know how productive this is. Even though I might be learning something, it's not so healthy. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong, but when we talk about nutrition and our energy field, if we're trying to preserve our peace of mind and our perspective on the world, it's really important to just notice what are those undertones of toxicity or violence, right? It's not nothing provocative, but it just really thin layer of something, right? So we all have little things, and when we're able to work on those things or just even understand our perspective, or be like, oh, I'm prone to gravitate towards a solid argument even if it's intellectual, knowing that, okay, maybe I'll listen to a little bit, I just won't explore, right? And I won't let it consume me. So how that works, so how do we not let things consume us? And this is kind of the pivotal thing that I talk about, where there's the difference between preparation and planning. When we plan, we create. When we prepare, we are creating a roadmap. There's a structure. So if you think about, like a lot of people say they want to plan their children, right? Plan having children. And the thing is the child in themselves is the creation, not the plan. And when we think of that as a creation, right? The creations in themselves are unpredictable. So anything that we've created, right? If you think about a rose garden, and by the way, for any of you that still want to sign up for the newsletter and get the 90-day journey, I will link it below as well, but feel free to reach out and I'll give you, it's a beautiful 53-page book, which is an ebook, which is a transformational journey through taking you through building a rose garden. So when we think about this kind of stuff, the perspective in itself is like, even a rose garden, you can't predict some of it. You could say, I plan on making a rose garden. Whatever happens next is going to be on how you prepare, right? And that is the difference. That's the pivotal difference. The plan is the garden. The preparation will determine what develops in the garden. So when we think of a Hasidic practice, Hasidus in itself is the preparation. So much of Judaism in itself is the hachana, the preparation. So just noticing in your day what you are doing to prepare. And the reason that we prepare is because outside of the situation itself, we are removed from the emotional or the volatile or the fear or any of the pieces of the scenario that might trigger us, or if we might be susceptible to criticism or any of that kind of stuff. So when we take that time to prepare beforehand, right? If I say, even with a diet, I'm going to eat whatever, or I'm going to walk this amount in a day, it's much easier to do when there are no triggers. And once you've put that roadmap in there the first time in the planning, it's much easier to draw strength from the plan itself rather than try to figure out the components when the situation is going down or when everything's on fire, right? So that's why menus are great, lists are great, plans are great. But I would always say simplify. Keep it simple, because simple things are easy to repeat. So just notice that. And complexity you can do with time. But what happens with complexity is that it is doomed to repetition if it is too complex. So preferably stick with something that's working, then add another layer that might not be conducive or productive, or you don't know if that's going to work. So I advise you to try that. Explore where in your life you can simplify, where in your life can you cut some corners to know that you can get the delivery, like you can actually get the job done. And try to prepare in advance. So removing the ego component of it, of why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, it's so important to really do this for yourself. And when we really include ourselves, our mind and our body, when we're able to have that compassion for our mind and body and our soul, we unite everything together, and it helps us communicate clearly. That way, the people we speak to really understand what we're saying. So back to the beginning, where communication's not just about what you're saying, but what the other person hears. And if we're organized and clear, the other person will really be able to have that opportunity to hear what we're saying. So thank you so much for joining me here today. We're going to have the newsletter as well made out of this audio for anyone that needs. And yeah, we're here for it.
Let yourself heal. It's easy to feel.